Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, November the 2nd, 2021, and I am going to continue talking about Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos book. And this is part 2 from the video I posted, part 2 of the video that I posted yesterday. That's a bit of a book review slash my experience doing the 12 rules during the month or during the year of 2019, practicing one rule each month. Just as a recap of part 1, the first 6 rules that I covered in that video were: rule number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Rule number 2, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Rule number 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. Rule number 4, do better today than yesterday? No. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. Rule number 5, don't let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. And rule number 6, get your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Actually, I'll take rule 6 a little bit more in depth because I know I was a bit hurried in doing rule 6 yesterday. It's in that rule he really goes sort of into quite a bit of how when the Jews left Egypt, or the Israelites left Egypt, and were like walking around in the desert for 40 years, and like whatever has happened, like Old Testament wise, they always sort of asked first where did we go wrong. In that sense, they never sort of doubted the goodness of being itself, but more from a taking responsibility standpoint of like, where did I go wrong in this equation. And and I think that's sort of the central message of rule 6, in that the thing about personal responsibility, setting your own house straight. He talks quite a bit also about Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelagos, and he says that Solzhenitsyn could have blamed Stalin and Hitler themselves, but he still he asked, what can I do now to repair the situation now? And that was incredibly helpful and constructive for me. And and one thing I'll also say about rule number 6 is that it's one of those where it's very constructive, but it's sort of that bridge rule where you're going from rule 1 is like almost your own biochemistry. Again, rule number 2 is yourself. 3 is like choosing your friends, not choosing projects that you as a means to avoid your own issues. And I say projects, I mean like people who are projects. But then rule 4 is again like improvements on each day, so it's still sort of like within the realm of yourself. Rule 5 takes it a little outward with children. Rule 6 is your house, your immediate environment, but also your psychological space, sort of still in that yourself realm before like expanding your scope outward, but it's getting there, because in the following rules, the scope sort of starts to move outward. Oops, something happened here. Okay, so the scope starts to move outward with the next rules. And that's sort of that last rule of that's the last sort of self rule, if you will. Anyways, so and it's a great rule, because and it's gotten a lot of, it's become the internet meme of, clean up your room and all that. And on that note, I highly recommend, there's this DJ by the name of Akira the Don, and he has done Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life in song form, where he has taken Jordan Peterson's words and he has put it to like his music. It's a genre called lo-fi, something fi. My daughter told me, I forgot, but I think it's lo-fi. That's a genre of music. And if any teen watches this, they're probably like, "Oh, duh, it's a genre of music." But I don't know. Okay, I'm an old lady, so I think it's lo-fi. Anyways, so it's look up that guy. He's wonderful, and what he's done with Dr. Jordan Peterson's work. Okay, so oh, and I always listen to that song whenever I'm cleaning up my room, because he's done such a great job of it. And my youngest kid, he starts to walk like Mickey and goes, "Clean up your room, clean up your room, clean up your room, clean up your room." It's very funny. Anyways, so rule number 7 is do what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And oh my goodness, that rule was so meaningful to me personally. I could say I used to be the queen of expedience. And and that probably was why I felt such an existential sense of meaninglessness, because if everything was like the fastest, most expedient way to get shit done, get this accomplished. Like some might call me, in corporate, very results oriented. That's true, but at the cost of what? So yeah, it's extremely expedient. So doing what is meaningful versus what is expedient, I think learning that lesson and practicing that for the entire month of July in 2019 was quite a challenge, but it also really helped me, because it also helped me to see places in my life where I had taken shortcuts that did not really prove to be shortcuts, because in the end sum, you kind of in the end you still have to do what you have to do. So and this is something that I think Jordan Peterson has said in his interviews, not precisely in the book, but he says people don't get away with anything. There's always you always have to do the actual thing. You just have to. That's just in his work as a psychologist, that's what he had seen, that nobody really gets away with anything. And when I say expedient, I didn't mean I broke any rules or laws in my expedience, but they were certainly on the edge, I should say, not of law breaking, but of morality and of how I felt would be the right thing to do, versus just get this shit done. So which has its place, I should say, and it's not like I was not rewarded for that kind of behavior from a financial standpoint, because that kind of behavior is very sometimes rewarded in corporate. It's true. Anyway, so that rule, do what is meaningful, not what is expedient, I think has also helped me a lot now with all the stuff that we are dealing with right now in the year 2021, and I mean with things like mandates and stuff, because it would be so much more expedient to go along with certain things that don't apply to me. But it's not about that, because I am finally, like, those rules have become such a part of my own DNA that it's like, on certain issues that I can say, you know what, whatever, it doesn't apply to me. I can just carry on. I don't need to I don't need to advocate for some group that may or may not want to participate, etc., in mandatory things and all that. But that's not what it's about. Doing that, letting things go like that, would be the expedient thing. Doing what is meaningful means seeing, like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, where things lead, where the slow creep and loss of liberties truly leads. Where does it lead? What slaughterhouse are we being carted to as cattle, So that has really, sometimes I have been more vocal about things that I could get away with not being too vocal about, not speaking up. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, because quite a bit of that is rule number 8. But nevertheless, because again, rule number 8, builds on rule number 7. Rule number 8 is speak the truth, say the truth, speak the truth, or at least don't lie. And that is, oh my God, that is such a brilliant rule. And I really enjoy the way he gives, the example of his interaction with his Quebecois landlord, Denis, in his book, and how hard it was for him to really stand up and say the truth. And then, to say the truth, you have to know what the truth is, not just the whole, this is my truth business, which is sometimes it's like, well, no, what are you specifically talking about? But he says, you can always detect what is a lie, because you have this physiological sense of weakness, and as you continue to persist in a lie, you weaken yourself by saying, by going along and saying yes when you actually mean no, by not being, specific like that, and not being attentive to those internal physiological cues that are telling you, what, no, this is not something I'm actually okay with, and then voicing that, after you discern carefully what exactly is the truth that you're trying to get at. And so that rule number 8 is just such a foundational cornerstone, and I think it's the essence actually of what makes Jordan Peterson, because it's very clear, like in all of his other stuff, in his objection to the bill C-16, it's a Canadian rule or law or whatever. I don't know anything about Canadian laws, but Bill C-16 was something he was opposing, and he got a lot of flack for it. But I think the people who gave him flack for it, they did not really listen to his true message and what he was actually talking about. What he was saying was, don't force words. Don't change the freaking language and ban certain words, because if you ban certain words and almost make it easy to sue somebody because they use certain words, like he, him, whatever, she, her, and by saying that if you don't use these words and you use other words and you're doing hate speech or whatever else, you're actually tampering with language, and you're messing with freedom of speech. And I think that, that time I didn't think that was such a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, but now I see that it was. with all this BS about misinformation and getting shadow banned and having this thing on YouTube where like it comes up, if you use certain wrong words, again, like, why am I saying wrong words? Why couldn't I just say those words? Because then there'll be a box under my video with the like, oh, Mr. this is the context. Such a load of crap. Anyways, and I think that's ironic, that I can say shit, I can say crap, I can say fuck on YouTube, and that's fine. But if you say certain other words, you all know what I'm talking about, then you get this big box under your video, which is, I think it's ironic. It's so bloody ironic. Anyway, so that's I think Jordan Peterson's objection to that was the canary in the coal mine. We should have paid more attention to it. Okay, so that's rule number 8. Rule number 9 is, oh my god, it was again brilliant rule. Listen to the person, so when you're listening to someone, listen as if the person what was it? Oh damn, why am I forgetting the precise words? Listen as if the person you are, the person who is speaking knows something that you don't. And that was just great, because even though I do listen, and I actually love to listen, given how much I talk, people may think that I'm not much of a listener, but actually deep down, or not even deep down, generally, I prefer hanging out with talkative people, because I love sitting there quietly and listening, which is why I also love listening to lectures. I love listening to people who have a lot to say and who have a lot of opinions that are very different from mine, because I really enjoy listening to where they're coming from, and especially the more different a person, the better, because I really want to get that. And so I think this rule, it helped me to take that to the next level, to really sort of understand even why I enjoy it so much, because I really do. So listening to a person as if they know something that you don't, because, and this happens I think quite a bit in interpersonal, in close intimate partnerships and close relationships, where you already assume that this person, because you've known them for such a long time, that they stand here on an issue, and so as soon as they start saying something, you're like, no, because you've already assumed that this is what the trip they're on. But that may or may not be true, and it's so important to sometimes just sort of keep that carte blanche, almost like, no, maybe not. Maybe there's something here that I did not know about you before. And so I think rule number 9, listen as if the person you're listening to is knows something that you don't. Was very useful. Rule number 10 is something I still need to work on. Be precise with your speech. And if you're listening, be like, well, duh. Of course you're not precise with the speech. You ramble so much. Yes, I do. Rule number 10 is a huge area of growth for me. Being precise with your speech means, but it's much more than just be concise, which is what I love about Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, because even though it's such a simple rule, right? He's not just like, oh well, duh, I know I have to be concise. No, it goes into, even when you're having an argument or disagreement with somebody, and again, people who are the closest to you, and then the argument becomes about everything, and then nothing gets solved. It's so important to be precise, to remain up with the issue at hand, with the topic at hand. And I think that was absolutely brilliant role. I have begun to follow that. It has helped greatly in my marriage, I must say, because sometimes, there's always a temptation, I think, in a marriage to start an argument about, you're having a conversation about something, but then you have leverage if you bring up something else from somewhere else or whatever. And sometimes there may be a temptation to use that to win the argument. But one thing that I should say, okay, I found this rule very useful in calling out my husband when he throws out such distractions, because he is way better at arguing than I am. I know that may sound hard to believe, but he'll win any argument with me. So he knows how to just done, matter closed. Ironically, he's the one who suggested Dr. Jordan Peterson's book to me. Well, he actually had suggested the Kathy Newman interview to me initially. And I saw that interview, and I knew nothing about Jordan Peterson, but I just saw the way this woman was harping on things that even to me, something didn't sound right. This is before I knew anything about Jordan Peterson or his work or read his book, nothing. And she was just I felt like she was just picking on him or misconstruing something about something, and I didn't like that. It just didn't feel right. I felt like she was bullying him unnecessarily. Okay, let's see if this charger works, because there's been problems with this charger. Okay, so anyways, I felt so that's what actually got me to this, got me around to this. Anyways, so let's see. So be precise in your speech is really useful in even getting you to kind of stay within the scope of whatever the matter at hand is. And oh, thank God it's charging. So that's rule 10. Rule 11 is, oh no, please, yeah, it's not, never mind. There's a bunch of chargers that are not working in this place. Rule number 11 is really about that whole rule 11 is do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And that may seem like, what's that about? What do you mean do not bother children when they're skateboarding? But I think that rule, it goes a lot into this whole attack on masculinity almost. Also quite a bit about how, okay, I have to change this thing. Quite a bit about edible mothers and how not to be one. And he talks about this some guy on a train thing, like a train worker, a guy who was called Lunch Bucket or something, and how that was his nickname, and how that was how this guy basically he couldn't roll with the boys, so to speak, because he was he was maybe kind of over mollycoddled by his mother. He also goes quite a bit into the data on this kind of people trying to make things more equitable, and actually making things more totalitarian. I think that was very very prescient given what has continued to happen in this world. Okay, and then so rule number 11 was do not bother children when they are skateboarding. Also, it goes quite a bit into when people say that they are trying to like tax the rich, help the poor, this kind of thing. It's not actually that they love the poor. They actually hate the rich because they want to be like that. So I thought that too, that aspect that he goes into was also very prescient, again, given what we are going through today with this sort of like almost attack on people who and I should say, like, yeah, okay, they start off with like billionaires, but they should never really applies to billionaires and trillionaires, and it always ends up hollowing out the middle class or the upper middle class. But anyways, I'll go off on a bad tangent there if I can. So that's rule number 11. Highly recommended. Rule number 12 is about, what is rule number 12 about? Rule number 12 made me cry pretty much. It was so he does go a lot into, it's quite personal, and he talks about his daughter and like all the health challenges that she had and all that she's gone through. And she's just pretty famous, Taylor Peterson. She has her own podcast also. But to hear about all the stuff that this child went through, my God, like, and being that I am a mother, I like, oh my God, like it reminded me of the times when my own kid has been sick, or like very sick, and yeah, it was but let me get back on the rule itself. The rule is pet a cat when you see one on the street. Even a dog will do. And that one is really about sort of about narrowing your time frame. When you're in crisis, they say that like you have to only think about, like, what do I do today? What should I do just for the next hour? What should I do for the next, like, you have to like kind of make your time frame really small when things become really hard. Like, it's almost like coming full circle with rule number 1, because rule number 1 is all about how when you're at the top of the hierarchy, you don't have to think so short term. You can plan far ahead. You can give up cheap short-term pleasures and cheap short-term crap that's not working, or that will be bad for you in the long run, in the interest of of the long game, so to speak. But rule number 12 is really about when you are in the shit, so to speak. How do you shorten your time frame? Is that working? No, right? Oh, okay, wait. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. Yeah. Because I've been waiting. No worries. Thanks. So yeah, rule number 12 really brings it full circle to where you can then, having done everything, having built yourself up, having understood what dark places you can go to, you also give yourself this sort of, well, when life does get really crappy, then what do you do? And what you do is you shorten your time frame. And so that's the 12th rule, and that's that with the 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan Peterson. I highly recommend it, and I hope you guys will read the book if you well, not if you haven't already, but I really love the book and I highly recommend it. Thank you for listening. Bye.